I'm Emiliano. I'm the founder and the CEO of a company called Satellogic. We build satellites and we launch satellites to space. What we're doing actually is building a planetary scale analytics platform that is based on a proprietary constellation of satellites. Okay, so we started the company 5 years ago, and we started developing sound technology, leveraging commercial off-the-shelf electronics, new manufacturing techniques, and computer design, hardware and mechanics, and optics and electronics. We figured out a way to build high-resolution imaging satellites that cost 1,000 times less than what traditional satellites cost. So instead of building this monolithic, 1.5-ton satellites that take images of Earth and cost hundreds of millions, up to $1 billion, we're building satellites that cost a few $100,000 and are 35 kilograms and can still do a lot of the same things. Okay? So our satellites today can take high-resolution imaging of the planets. Instead of taking 10 years to go through a whole cycle for developing them, we can do them in a few months. And once we put them in space, because they're so cheap, we can put a large constellation of the satellites and start collecting a lot more data of what's going on the planet. We think this gives us a very unique opportunity, okay? The opportunity to start looking at our planet completely afresh. Up until now, there's a lot of global processes going on that we really have no way to measure or quantify. We think by putting a very large constellation of satellites in orbit as a sensor network, we'll be able to start quantifying some of these processes in real time and have impact in the way we produce and distribute food for 7 billion people, and the way in which we generate and distribute energy for 7 billion people. Also in building the infrastructure and monitoring how we build the infrastructure to be able to do that. And finally, to do it in a way that's sustainable, so that we're not depleting resources from future generations. By putting a large sensor network around the Earth, we will be able to quantify these processes for the first time and look at the Earth meter by meter in real time to see what's going on. A little bit, you probably heard a lot about the quantified self. People putting Fitbits and other things on their wrists to measure every one of those activities. So we started thinking, why not do the same thing for Earth? Why can't we actually quantify everything that's going on the planet and start deriving insights from that information? So that's what we set out to do. Over the last few years, we launched 3 satellites, early prototypes of this technology. Since 2013, we launched the first couple of satellites in 2013, our third satellite in 2014. And we're starting to roll out this year our larger constellation. We're launching 2 more satellites in May 30th. They're actually shipping to China, where we were launched from in a few days, in April 22nd. After these 2 satellites, we have 4 more going out at the end of the year, and we're looking at another 19 satellites to launch next year. We're growing this constellation until the end of the decade, when we expect to have a constellation of 300 of these satellites around the Earth, essentially to be able to measure anything that goes on the planet with 5-minute frequency. Any point on the Earth, every 5 minutes. This is a little bit what the images that we take look like. You can see cars, you can see rivers, you can see roads, you can see individual trees. This is just in the visible spectrum. Besides the visible spectrum, we take images in the near-infrared spectrum and the thermal spectrum, and there's a lot of things that you cannot see with your eyes. These capabilities give us a very unique new way to look at what's going on Earth. So imagine that you have the chance to point at any point on the planet and see what's going on. How will that change the way you can make decisions in your companies? How would that make you make different decisions in local governments or in national governments? How we would relate with our planet in a different way if we could know and if we could derive insights for what's going on. That's a little bit the mission of the company. These are our next 2 satellites. This is our manufacturing facility in Uruguay. This is last week, actually. Those 2 satellites are now ready to ship. Those things in the middle, now ready to ship. So we will launch them in May 30th, and after May 30, you will be able to start looking at the images that we generate from the planet from our website. So we welcome you to do so. And I'll leave it to this, guys, and we have to answer questions afterwards. Thanks.
Well, first of all, it's a great privilege to be here today. My name is Ernesto Rodriguez Leal. I am an associate professor at Tecnológico de Monterrey, and I'm also CEO of Wearabot. It's a startup that we are focusing right now on helping the elderly to improve their mobility. I would like to thank also Joan for inviting me here today. I'm very excited. And I've been working on robotics for the last 10 years. Everything started when I was at King's College London doing my PhD under the supervision of Professor Jan Dai. And I think more, especially me, I feel very excited about this topic, and I'm sure more of one of you as well, because who hasn't dreamt of a future in which robotics can help us to overcome our challenges and even to help us augment our capacities. But somehow, all these dreams have been not fulfilled. I think robotics is right now in a deceptive stage and is about to become exponential. And we are very lucky because we are the generation who is going to witness all these changes. I have a particular motivation in working on robotics because of a personal story. This is my dad. 3 years ago, he started losing his mobility. He couldn't walk very well. He couldn't raise his arms. He had a couple of major surgeries and hundreds of rehabilitation sessions, but his condition didn't improve. Modern medicine has failed him to get back his mobility. I'm pretty sure that this story might be familiar to all of you because my dad is just one of the 600 million senior citizens in the world. And guess what? By 2050, we are all going to be 2 billion of them. As in our modern society, thanks to exponential technologies, we will be able to achieve longevity. But the question is, how is going to be our quality of life once we reach old age? And the elderly have a serious problem of mobility loss, and we are working very hard to help them. This is mainly because of several conditions such as stroke, arthritis, or chronic joint injury. And right now, one option, if we want to help our relatives, is to send them to rehabilitation. But the process is really, really bad. I know it. I witnessed with my dad. It's expensive, it's not accessible, and it's very painful for the user. So now that we are working on robotics, we thought about the possibilities and alternatives of using technology to enhance our bodies. And it's not a crazy idea after all, because as human beings, we haven't received an upgrade in our hardware for the last 50,000 years. So maybe robotics is a solution to this situation. So together with my team, one day we thought, how about if we give the elderly Iron Man suits so they can improve their mobility? Now, Iron Man is, of course, fiction, but exoskeletons have been going around for several decades. In fact, right now, this technology that is still deceptive and is about to become exponential, it's expensive, it's not versatile at all, and it has a very limited control. And I'm going to tell you a few examples. On one hand, we have this beautiful piece of technology that is a Cyberdyne HAL robot. It's very expensive. The exoskeletons can cost from $67,000 up to $125,000. This is really expensive. And one reason is because they come in one single piece. If you need an exoskeleton, you need to buy the whole thing. They also have several technical problems because most of them are designed with telescopic linkages, and that means that you can adjust the length of the exoskeleton to fit you, somehow more or less to fit you well. But it's actually a problem because once the rotational axis of the exoskeleton does not coincide with the joint of the user, it can cause more problems than benefit. It's a great problem. And also, it's very absurd to think that the most advanced exoskeletons in our days is controlled with a joystick. Also, if you observe the clinical centers and rehabilitation centers, you will see that they have practices from several hundred years. There is still one person delivering the therapy. It's not uniform. Even you get treated by the same person every day. It's not going to be the same rehabilitation session. And we're doing this in a blind way. We're not measuring what's going on with the user. So together with my team at Tecnológico de Monterrey, we created a spin-off called Wearabot. And we have developed an active exoskeleton that can be used either as a motion assistant or as a rehabilitation device. And this is how it works, and this is what we're doing. First, we are scanning, we're digitizing the human body in order to obtain the rotational axis of the joints. either to make biologically fit design or to set up properly the exoskeleton. We're also applying our modularity concept, which means that the exoskeleton can be broken apart and the user can have access to specific exoskeletons for individual joints, such as the knee, the elbow, the shoulder. They can interconnect to each other to form a full body exoskeleton, and this lowers the cost significantly. About the control systems, we are using non-invasive technology to pick up brain and muscle signals in order to identify the precise instance in which the user requires torque assistance. We are doing this in a non-invasive way, and we are using artificial intelligence, and we are using extreme learning machine algorithms to do this. Concerning the rehabilitation process, we're using virtual and augmented reality, and with this we are able to create gamified scenarios in which the user can follow and can play. And all these scenarios are linked to exercises that have to do with specific and target rehabilitation routines for the user. All the exoskeleton itself is an Internet of Things device, and it's full with sensors, accelerometers, and everything goes to a tablet or an application that the doctor has in his or her office, and it helps them to take better decisions about the status and the next steps to follow for the user. We envision a future in which exoskeletons are going to be democratized. We want every single person to have access to this technology because we want to empower our users. Just like my dad, that they can continue doing the things that they really loved when they were young, and why not to pursue new challenges and dreams. Our purpose and our objective is to end with physical disparity that is affecting or will affect each one of us in a single point of our time, and we believe that with the use of robotics we can do this. Thank you.
Great, Ernesto. Congratulations. First of all, it's an honor to be in this stage presenting the advance of robotics in my field in terms of service robots and artificial intelligence application for residential use. Since my 16, I'm a curious entrepreneur, and in the field of robotics, in the field of what domestic robots can bring to Latin America specifically. And in the following presentation, I will show you the scenario that we have in Latin America in terms of service robots and some cultural and corporate implication that the technology has with this. Emiliano and Ernesto talk a lot about the huge opportunity that robotics can bring to the space and the healthcare field. But first of all, I would like to define together with you what is a robot and a mobile robot. And to make this definition, I would like to compare it to the human body. We have a human body that we feel through our senses, we think through our central processor unit that is our brain, and we do through our body. The robots sense through sensors, think through processors, and do or act through hardware and software. Sensors and processors, they are more smaller, they are more cheaper, they are more smart. And with this definition, we can define together that a robot is a machine that can feel, they can sense the environment and make a specialized action plan. And we have to make clear that the robotics is not just R2-D2 from Star Wars, it's a lot more. And maybe a lot of us make a direct relation with robots or artificial intelligence applications, and we are not conscious about this. In Latin America, since my 16, I helped my father looking for strategic gaps in terms of business, in terms of marketing, to introduce robotics in Latin America. In 2005, we introduced the Dolphin, the first robotic pool cleaner in Argentina. It was the first domestic robot that entered to Argentina and came with a lot of cultural, a lot of corporate implication of this technology, that we incorporate this technology. Right now, we are active in 6 countries with Mytronics. Let me ask you a question. Please raise your hands. Do you have a robot in your house? How many of you has a robot in his house? A few, but not most, maybe 20% of the audience. let me make another question. Do you think you will have one by 2020, in 4 years' time? A few more, maybe 30%. And this show exactly this gap. We have the technological possibility that is really exponential. And we have really lower the social, the political, and the economic change, the real life. This reality gap, this really show us what will come in the next few years in terms of robotics. And this is a graphic from Harvard Business Review that really synthesizes a lot of this acceptance to robotics that we have in terms of threats to humans and level of humanness. We can find in the upper right corner Terminator, and in the lower corner the Wall-E. And we have there is a lot of theories surrounding the cultural implications concerning robots, but we have really a huge gap between the acceptance of these machines and these products, these utilities. Right now in a house you can find robotic pool cleaners, you can have vacuum cleaners, you can have lawn mowers, window cleaners, robotic pets, grill cleaners, etc., etc., etc. A lot of really useful applications that it's important to make clear that when a robot comes to an industry, it's because it's make a job really better than a human, exponentially better than a human capability. In terms of artificial intelligence, we can find mobile assistants like Microsoft Cortana, Apple Siri, or the M from Facebook that is really help us on a daily basis in terms of our average consumer, and really what artificial intelligence can bring to the home will make really a huge evolutions in terms of the relationship between humans and machines. There is some examples that are really shocking. For example, Eternity.me. It's a social network that registers all our digital tattoos, all our check-in, new friends, or register in search index. And what it makes is an artificial intelligence for end users that when this person dies, it makes an avatar with your personality to continue communicating with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues. And this will change radically how we conceive life and how we conceive the human relations. This looks like science fiction, but it's really a technology that will become, and we will see more and more in the last few years. And we have to make clear that robotics is not just artificial intelligence or domestic robots with mobile or satellites or exoskeletons. There's a lot of machines that use robotics as a basis, like for example drones, autonomous vehicles, experimental robotics like now that we have one here. I think the Florida University has one here in the stand booth. They are all operated by robotics bases. We in Mitronics, the company that I work for, an Israeli company, we have developed an artificial intelligence drowning detection system. It's a system for swimming pools, commercial swimming pools, that detects live through artificial intelligence when a person is drowning live and tell the lifeguard, that this person is drowning in a specific point of the swimming pool. So we can see a lot of advance in terms of service, in terms of robotics and artificial intelligence for the average use and the average application, because this is life and this saves lives. And in terms of market, the service robotics, combined personal and professional, expect to grow around 21-22% in the next 4 years, and the service market is projected to reach almost $11 billion by 2020, according to global industry analysts. It's really numbers that they are shaping the industry and are forecasting a lot. And there is a more shocking premise that by 2025, robots will take over 30% of our jobs. It's in less than 10 years. This will make radical change in terms of in terms of what we conceive as work, in terms of social acceptance, in terms of economic development, in terms of political development also. And there is a more shocking premise that is 4 years later, by 2029, robots will have reached human level of intelligence. This is Ray Kurzweil. Tomorrow he will give the feature keynote that we all expect for. And a little conclusion or a little more shocking premise is that the innovation industry stipulates that by 2035, the amount of autonomous units will surpass the level of people in the planet. So this will make radically change in terms of social acceptance, in terms of work, in terms of this reality gap that we have as a society. And just to finish, Isaac Asimov, the greatest literarist from the 19th century, said that the saddest aspect of life, it was the technology or science advanced really, really more faster than the society in knowledge. So our mission as witnesses of all this digital transformation, of citizens, responsible citizens, of entrepreneurs, and the business world or corporate man, is to flip really this gap and to start using or conceiving these technologies in a critic way, in a way that will help society and it will help our business to do really better lifestyle and better business models. So that's it. Thank you very much. If you have any question for any of us, I think there is a mic over here. Microphone. Here is a question. I don't know if there is any mic.
There's one here.
Oh.
Hello, I'm Felipe. I love the potentials of this future, and I saw something similar from Citrix in a more consumer, business-oriented way, which all this data flows around and all that. And being a fan of Star Trek, if you will, you sit there and look at the next generation, if any of you were into that, and that's the idealized version of humanity with technology. And yet, if you look how the internet's evolved and the number of threats we face and how we're starting to actually see stuff that's starting to look closer to inherent evil, if you will, in the system, how will these things evolve without becoming threats to us, existentially, potentially? And I know that's an insanely deep question right now.
Good question.
Yeah.
I think it's too early to say. I don't have an answer to this question. What I can tell you is that if you look at, I like to look at this curve, which is, how many people can a crazy person kill? It's like over time. Okay, so you start, I don't know, a couple of millennia ago, and a crazy person could kill maybe, I don't know, 10 people with a rock, and then, they'll be caught. And then, you go a few years later, and you have, I don't know, arrows, and then somebody with like good bow and arrow, and in a good place, can probably kill, 50 people because it gets caught, right? And then you go to gunpowder, and somebody can like sit on top of a tower and maybe take out like 200 people, 500 people before it gets caught, and so on, right? And now, I don't know, maybe this decade, somebody with a virus synthetically, produced can go on and kill cities full of people, or wipe out a continent. And so the level of, I like to look at this, which is the level of how many people can a crazy person kill before it gets caught, right? And it's looking really, really bad, but we still have a society somehow. So, maybe there's not so much inherent evil as you think. Maybe there's more inherent good than inherent evil. That's one thing. The other thing that I would say, coming from a space technology company, is that the way you protect against those things is you back up humanity somewhere else, right? I mean, if somebody can wipe out the whole planet, let's better, establish a presence somewhere else so we have a backup. That's what I would say. And I think robots will be very, very helpful when we try to do that. I don't expect we can do that only with human exploration. So I think there's two sides to the problem. I think robots and AI are one tool that we're building. I don't think robots will think the same way we think. They will have the same drivers to do the things that we do. Some people used to say that when they talk about artificial intelligence, like the question if a machine can think is very similar to the question is, does a submarine swim? And it really doesn't. It's just that's something different. It just moves through water, right? But we don't say the submarine is swimming. And I think AI, artificial intelligence, I think it's probably better to think of it as alien intelligence. They're going to think, but they're going to think in a way that's completely different from what we think. So it's hard for me to believe that they will have incentives to wipe us out of the planet. I can't see that happening.
Let me add something, Emiliano. When also we have these debates and this type of questions has rise, I would like to flip this question. I would like to ask us what skills we need to develop in the next coming years to really approach this technology with a way of thinking to really make a better lifestyles and better business models. Which skills we need to really grow with more intelligent machines, because this is the future, and there is an expression in Argentina that say we cannot block the sun with our hands. This evolution is coming, and these graphics are not science fiction. We see them in a daily basis. But I would like to ask ourselves what skills we need to develop to really approach this technology and to live with more intelligent machines in terms of robotics and AI. I don't know if...
Yeah, I think it's a very complex question, and we can probably spend several weeks discussing this. But what I can tell you from a hardware point of view, we still suck. We still need, lots of decades to get to that point, to the scary point where robots can, do some harm to us. However, robotics and artificial intelligence, they are just another tool, as my colleagues were mentioning. And we, the humans, are the ones that dispose of those tools in an ethical way or not. So if we can see both scenarios, one very utopic, one very positive, one very negative. I think that robotics and artificial intelligence will help us to raise more questions and help us define ourselves as humans, and how do we envision the future ahead of us together with robotics. For me, I can tell you I'm a very positive person, and I see robots as a tool that can help us to overcome most of our challenges. But the question is, how many people in the world are like me, that are positive people? That's the thing that I think we should be concerned about. But it's an excellent question. Thanks.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for you guys coming. I think you're describing the future age that we're going to see with robots. My question is similar on the line of, it's exciting, everything we're seeing, and, I want to get involved after seeing the presentation, especially, I have grandparents that need your technology and things like that. So that's amazing, but at the same time, I remember maybe a month ago, Microsoft released its like artificial intelligence with Twitter, and one of the questions was like, do you support genocide? And the robot says yes, and all these other crazy questions. And you would think that artificial intelligence bot wouldn't have value judgments for such intense questions. And looking also at, I'm new to AI for the past 5 or 6 months, just researching it. But I mean, technology is growing exponentially. Like, people are really interested in it. So like, my question is more specific instead of a philosophical question, especially maybe for the professor. As many people are developing AI, are there people just as equivalent looking at the limits of AI, so that when it gets to super intelligence beyond human thinking, that we actually have those things in place? Like, is there that balance there, or is there more need of that? Because if things go bad, they could go really bad.
Ethics and AI are, they go together, and I think for every researcher in the field, ethics and AI has always been a topic since the early 60s. For researchers, somehow, for the people really deeply building AI, it tends to be something that we think of sort of as an afterthought, because we've seen sort of the history of ethics and AI as a topic for a long time. It's like, okay, it's not, it's still not yet the point. We're still not yet at the point where we think the AI can do things that we don't program it to do, and it will get some point. But there is, I can tell you there is. Like, for example, Google acquired this company called DeepMind a while back, and I think one of the requests that the founders of DeepMind asked of Google after the acquisition was that Google set up an ethics board to look at the implications of artificial intelligence, and they have this board internally. And now Google is actually leading the process of building a cross-company board for looking at the ethics around artificial intelligence. And I think there is an interest in every company and in every researcher in the field to do that. So it's not something that's being left untouched. People are thinking about it. I don't think there's any consensus as to what's the way to do it. I would ask, however, I mean, I understand that Microsoft put out a bot in Twitter that said a few things about genocide, and that's really not that cool. But then I would ask also the other question is like, then they killed this bot, they turned it off, right? It's like, what's the ethics around that? Like, if a robot says something that you don't like, can you just turn it off? I don't know. I would think that sort of should be part of the question, right? Because there's free speech in the end. The robot didn't do anything but utter an opinion, and it got killed for it. So it's probably worse.
I personally agree a lot with the Millennium Vision concerning these questions we need to make, and we as humans are the principal responsible of this use. When the internet has created, it wasn't created to make a deep web for illegal activity. When the atomic bomb was created, it wasn't idealized for the use it has. When the Bitcoin has created, it wasn't conceived for Silk Road and all the things that are going on here. And I think we as humans has to make really have a critical vision concerning these technologies to really make good use and to improve lifestyles and the corporate businesses also.
I agree with my colleagues, and just a quick comment will be that everything is just the history is repeating itself with all the different technologies that you have been mentioning. The difference is that now everything is evolving to an exponential rate. But there are other things that are linear, that they are supposed to stay linear, like, for instance, regulation, government. All those things help us to kind of, have the time to make those questions and to really, apply everything as is supposed to be, thinking about worst-case scenarios and so on. And I think that it's not only in robotics. Biotechnology also have their own challenges. You can, produce a virus and can, unlock and do terrible things. So I think that regulations should stay linear, and it's helping us to ask ourselves these questions and to do everything in the right way, so we will not produce more harm than benefit. Thanks.
Thanks for the question.
Great. We're out of time. I'm going to invite those of you that might have questions to go ahead and come on down here and talk with the panelists. How about another round of applause for EK, Juan, and Ernesto?
Thank you very much.